yeah, so y'all have fun, and we'll see you guys in a bit.
Thank you.
All right, later.
So, how are you today?
Hey, Kerry, how are you?
Good, thank you. So, actually, when I was getting ready to or interview you, what I was expecting to do, sort of coming from like a rhythm section to vocalist, I was expecting to think more about how we would sort of interact in a bandstand and try to learn more about how rhythm section players can work with somebody like you. But the more I listened to your music and actually learned about you, I started to really become interested in, like, you have a really unique way of doing things and a really unique voice and stuff. And I wanted to learn a little bit more about you as a person and your journey. So I guess what I want to start with is like, while you have a unique background from the beginning of your journey, you've only built more and more upon that, and you've found more and more unique and wholesome experiences, like singing in the musical theater show A Bed in a Chair, New York Love Affair, and then taking that and diving into Stephen Sondheim's work. And you did a lot of things throughout your career. So I just sort of want to start by asking you what you think led you to come about these sort of opportunities and experiences throughout your life, and sort of what sort of mindset you have to guide you.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for checking out my music and stuff.
Oh, of course.
And that's a good question. Actually, I think the mindset that I've had from the beginning, when I first discovered that how I could touch people with music, which is kind of what made me want to play music. It wasn't really the music per se. It was when I realized how I could connect people, and that was one of the ways that was, that there was an opportunity for me to do it that way with music. When I met the gypsies when I was little, and I guess my mindset is, there's several things that I always keep in the back of my mind. I never want to forget why I'm doing this. So to share love and feel connection, and also to grow as a person and as a musician. And when you grow as a person, you grow as a musician, and when you grow as a musician, you grow as a person. And I guess the way to always kind of be seeking to grow is to put yourself in challenging positions, in outside of your comfort zone. And so, for example, when I dove into Sondheim, after being having been into the jazz scene in New York for years and not knowing anything about musical theater, and tackling a composer like Sondheim, who even the musical theater people are like, you can't, you can't touch the way it's written. That's the way it's written, and don't touch you gotta sing the ink, and he's like a legend. And I guess it was just because I didn't know anything about it, because I was totally new to it, that it attracted me to this project.
I see. And wow, okay, that's wow. So you sort of say, like, just sort of when you put yourself in these uncomfortable positions, you're sort of looking for new experiences, I guess you would say.
And and it's like this in life, even not just with music, but when you move to a different country, it's not easy. It's never easy to move, because you feel comfortable where you are, and so you change a lot of things, and so a lot of new inspiration comes. And I feel it's the same in music, to kind of, when you're feeling comfortable in an area of music, it means you gotta go somewhere else.
Wow, I see. So, all right. Speaking of like moving in different countries and stuff, you you of course you were in France at first, but you also spent some time in the Dominican Republic, didn't you, before coming to the U.S. Um, so well, actually, before I go there, that's like a huge decision. So I was wondering, what were some of the harder life choices you made that sort of helped you get to where you are? Like, um, well,
Yeah.
yeah, really hard ones
Um,
that
you know,
you may.
at the time, choices can seem hard, and then you realize that you were, you were, you know, you realize that that was the choice you had to make, or else you wouldn't be standing there. One of the hardest choices I had to make, and again, at the time it seemed hard, but now I'm so happy I did it. I was 18, and I was selected to be part of this real TV show, like big real TV show in France called Star Academy, which is kind of like, it's kind of like American Idol, but in France. And you know, it starts with 5,000 people, and then 2,000, and then 1,000, and a few hundreds, and then 16 people. And I was one of the 16 people. We were about to go on the prime time, and I was already on the cover of a magazine, and I had been interviewed, I had done a music video. And then they gave us this, right before the first day of the show, the live show on TV, they gave us this big contract to sign. And I was 18, I had just discovered jazz, and I knew that going in TV, they were not going to let me sing whatever I wanted.
Right.
And I wanted to learn jazz, I wanted to know more about it. And I had to make the choice to just say no. And it was hard, because when you're an 18-year-old girl, and it's like, all these sparkles and fame is shining in your face, it was a hard decision, but I don't regret it one bit, because I grew so much from it. I learned so much, and sometimes, yeah, the hardest decisions are the ones where you grow the most, you know?
Right. Wow.
Because you get to know yourself by those means.
Right, and like in getting to know yourself, were there times that you sort of struggled against yourself in some way, shape, or form? Like, you were very open about your journey, like with Move On and sort of what that represented to you. So, how do you overcome these points in your life where maybe where there's this sort of, you feel like you're being held back in some way, maybe?
Yeah. Well, sometimes, you know, sometimes you feel like you hit a wall,
Mm-hmm.
and you start to try and break the wall down, and you just put force, and what it creates is just more resistance.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're like looking at this wall, and you just want to go through it, because that was your main goal. You were going in that direction, and this wall just came, and this wall is against you, and so you have to break. But I feel sometimes we can be like wrapped up in our head and want to break the wall, but we have to take a step back, and instead of trying to break the wall, go around it. There's many other ways that are possible that maybe was not the way we intended it, but the wall, what it does, it gives you the opportunity to look a different way. It's not an obstacle. It's actually just look over there, you know. There's also other stuff that maybe right now you didn't know could interest you. So I guess when I come across things like that, like you said, like hitting a wall, or just, you have to learn to be in the moment, learn to put yourself back in the moment, and reassess where you're at. And it's the same on the bandstand. Because on the bandstand, you're gonna like arrive at moments where you're in your head, and you're judging yourself, whether it's, oh man, you suck, or whether it's, man, that was cool, you know. Both of those are not good. You have to be in the moment. And so it's all about, you know, it's almost impossible to always be in the moment. Even in life, you know, we're always connected with the phone. We're always thinking about, oh, what do we have to do, or oh, yesterday this happened. And on the bandstand, it's the same. It's hard to be in the moment at all times. But the thing is to always to get better, like a skill, you know, just like when you practice your instrument, to practice catching yourself when you're not in the moment, and find little tricks to bring you back in. And then to just do that more and more, so that those moments where you're in your head and like on autopilot and you're not there, or get shorter and shorter and fewer and far between. And that's really the struggle of the artist that people want to see. They want to see your humanity. They want to see you be vulnerable and be human.
Wow. Okay. So when listening to your music, one may take note of, like, you have, of course, tasteful arrangements and you make unique decisions. So while you tend to draw emotion and lyrical inspiration from many of your musical choices, you tend to draw from emotion and lyrical inspiration from many of your choices. You've had many experiences and garnered many skills that your interpretation of certain music that, well, hold on, let me think about how I want to phrase this. Sort of the experiences you've had over the years have sort of influenced the way you interpret music. And what are some noteworthy experiences that you may not have already mentioned in, you know, other places or even earlier today, that have developed your sound and interpretation of lyrics and emotions throughout your life, such as the languages you study, because you speak English, Spanish, and French. So just sort of how those all work with you taking words or emotions from a song and making creating one or the other.
Yeah. I mean, you know, there's definitely like some definite points in my life where something grabbed me and inspired me. Like, my mom's from Dominican Republic, so at a very young age, I would always hear salsa and merengue and bachata in the house because she loves to dance. So for me, the first inspiration to music was dancing. That's what music was for. Still kind of is for me. It's really a dance thing, a groove thing, you know?
Yeah.
Then when I met the Gypsies, I discovered this improvisation factor, that just because the Gypsies, that's how they live their life too. They improvise. They live every day like it's their last, and their music is the same. It's all really in the moment music. And then, you know, then I discovered Ella Fitzgerald, which made me want to come to America. And then I came to America and I discovered Miles and you know, and Coltrane and all the piano trios, Ahmad Jamal, Oscar Peterson, and just freaked out. And so there's like many stepping stones like that in terms of musical inspirations. And then Sondheim, not so long ago, who kind of like blew my mind in the lyrics realm, you know, how lyrics how you can dive so deep in lyrics and find yourself in them, find facets of yourself that you didn't know existed just by singing lyrics that have like this richness in it. But then, of course, influences come from a lot of things in your life, you know, from of course, places you visited, heartbreaks, you know, pain. So, my Sondheim record all comes from a heartbreak, like from deep, deep, deep pain, and it kind of saved me. But yeah, a lot of things shape you in your life and therefore influence your music.
Because I remember once you said, like, when you're sort of interpreting or when you're singing, for example, in I think you said English sort of has more elastic vowels, and French has usually stronger meaning behind the words. So I think when you sort of sing, or when you're listening to these different, or because
Languages?
I don't want to ask a question too specific, but then at the same time, I really want to sort of dive into
Tell me
this.
what you want to know, Kerry.
So when you are singing different styles of music, for example, or if you're making an arrangement for that, what is like a process that you sort of go through? Because I'm actually really interested in arranging myself, and when I hear your arrangements, I really want to sort of know what's
Yeah. Well,
behind
arranging
that.
is like really one of my favorite things to do. I love it because it is a challenge, because there's kind of like a fine line between doing it too much the same way
Mm-hmm.
and totally butchering it, you know? And you got to find kind of that sweet spot, and that sweet spot is different for everyone, because that sweet spot is basically where you live, where you yourself, how can this song become you, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, for example, for the Sondheim record, when I was working on arranging that, I didn't want to know what show the song came from. I didn't want to know who was the character singing the song. I didn't want to know what was the context of the story when this song, because I wanted to just completely feel what this song meant to me.
Right.
And so that I could really deliver it in a way that feels honest from me. And so the way I like to do it, because the groove, you can change everything. You can change the groove, you can change the tempo, you can change the harmony, you can reharm, you can change the melody, interpret in the way that you want, but the lyrics stay. So for me, the lyrics is the most important thing. If I don't connect with the lyrics, it's going to be difficult for me to work with this song. So I find a song that I really connect with, and then I just start just singing it a cappella, because that way I'm not constricted to a band or a way that it should be. And then the more I sing it, the more I start to hear a new whole thing in my head of how it could go. And then I start singing what the bass line is like, the bass line that I'm hearing. And so I don't read music. I don't know how to read chords and stuff. So I usually record voice notes of like how the bass line should be, what the groove should be. Usually these ideas come to me while I'm riding my bicycle. And
Wow.
and then I get a friend to write a chart, and then I try it with a band, and usually with the band it kind of takes form, and then everyone kind of has their input.
I see.
But yeah, I try to, the first work is to really become one with the song and not be attached to the version that you like, which is why you're covering that song, to honor the version that you like, but to honor yourself and give it how you would do it.
I see. Wow. Okay, so, wow. Okay, sorry, I'm just processing. So I also wanted to ask about your scatting, because I know that you have had a lot of experience with instrumental music, but of course, when I was first listening, even when I know singers who are also instrumentalists, when I listen to your scatting in particular, it seems so much more evocative of an instrumental solo approach. Like, I'm almost hearing like sort of sometimes like advanced like horn lines coming from your scatting. And do you feel like you have a stronger influence in soloing or scatting from an instrumental perspective, like when you were listening to Django Reinhardt, the piano trios like Ahmad Jamal, Ray Brown, and Oscar Peterson, or maybe your time at Purchase College, sort of where you think that came from, and or if it was back with the Gypsies, or
Yeah.
I just want to know about that.
I think the first my first scatting teacher was Ella, you know. When I discovered her, I had never heard anything like it, and someone gave me a 4 CD box set of her, and I knew every note on those 4 albums. And then I guess when I had all of that inspiration, I was like, okay, now I think it's time for me to make my own. But how do I do it? And I remember because I didn't know what syllables to say. You know, I didn't know if I had to do doobie doo or shooby shoo or. And one day there was a show, a concert going on in a boat in my village, and I was looking for my mom, and I was going down in there to see if she was there, and it was the middle of the show, and the guitar player was playing and scatting, and he was going like, he was doing the most ridiculous thing. He was going like, but it sounded awesome. And at this moment I was like, oh wait, it sounds awesome not because he like thought really long and hard about doing or that he practiced it or whatever. It sounded awesome because it just had to come out, and it was honest and just fun. And I came out of there, and I started scatting for the first time out loud, and it was just so much fun to just experiment. And so, just like I was telling you in the beginning, that my mindset is always to put myself in a difficult position, I try to do that as much as possible when I'm scatting. And of course, the best school for it is to listen to a lot of music, all the ones, you know, all the ones you talked about and that we've been talking about. And I did transcribe a lot of it, not by writing it down, but just by listening to it over and over and over. And also just scatting over everything and anything. Like if I'm in a restaurant and I go to the bathroom and they're on the little speakers, it's like, you know, the little lounge music. I just improvise over that just for fun. And I just love the freedom. It's like, for me, how I say that music is connected to dancing, to your body. That's where my voice comes from. It comes from my body, and it's kind of almost like I feel like I'm dancing with my voice when I'm feeling in that zone where I'm completely in the moment and just flowing. It's like dancing.
So do you think that I'm just curious if you think that learning music predominantly like by ear sort of helps you feel things or internalize things more in this way, like rather than, because I know a lot of like when you start off with sheet music, sometimes, you know, when we're like, especially well, I know I used to have a huge problem with sort of getting lost in the sheet music. And when you sort of like talking to you and sort of hearing your take on things, do you think that learning music by ear sort of helps you internalize everything and really process it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would love to know how to read music, you know. I definitely think it's a great, it's like a bonus, you know, like for arranging, so that way I wouldn't need someone to translate what I'm hearing to paper. I could just do it myself. Or for writing, you know. And I tried to learn, but I was at Purchase, and everyone in my class already knew how to read. So the teachers would just assume that everyone knew how to read, and it was going so fast for me. So my ears were way faster than my eyes. So I just relied on my ears for 4 years and pretended that I was reading, but I was just listening. But so I don't know what it feels like to get lost in the sheet.
Right.
But music is something that you hear. It's not something that you look at. And I do think, I mean, whenever I put a band together, there's no sheet music on stage. That's like forbidden in my band. it's just part of the job. You got to learn the stuff so that you can get lost in the music, not in the sheet. And I do think that learning stuff by ear, it just anchors it a lot more.
Mm. I remember you talked about like at one of your competitions uh, with the where you had the big band accompanying you. You said you played Oye Como Va, was
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
And the I forgot what it was with the band where how was that?
Yeah, it was at the Montreux jazz competition,
Mm-hmm.
and so you had to play like a couple songs with the house band, and all the other singers brought these 4-sheet charts, and so the
Mm-hmm.
band was like kind of like trying to get the intro, and so when you're performing and you're like having to cue the band and making sure they know where to go, and I think one of the reasons that I won is because I just came and I was just like, let's just play Oye Como Va. It's 2 chords, A minor, D7. And they're like,
Mm-hmm.
what, really? That's your song for the competition? I was like, yeah. And we had so much fun because we didn't have to think about the chord. We just created music together and we were having fun and people could feel it. And so, even if it's a 4-sheet chart, if you know it by heart, then you can really explore and take it to other places. You're not tied down.
Right. Wow. So when you're sort of or when you're working with people, like especially I'm a rhythm section player,
Mm-hmm.
so you're sort of would you say you're sort of looking when you're looking for people who can um sort of share that experience of I guess being in the moment with the music.
Of course, yeah. I think for me, a few things that are really important when I choose band members.
Mhm.
First is humanly. I like to be able to connect with the
Mhm.
people personally. You know, in this job, in this industry, the people that are gonna be your bandmates are your family, because you're gonna be touring with them, you're gonna be with them a lot, and
Mhm.
so you gotta get along. You gotta love each other, really.
Right.
I Every time I play with people, I just love them, and I love listening to them. Sometimes I have to tell my students, when you're not singing, it doesn't mean you stopped making music. You're still making music by being there, the energy of you just standing there and listening to the band. They can, that energy, they can feel it if you're not listening, or if you're listening, if you're feeling, you're creating energy altogether, whether sound is coming out of your mouth or not. And so you gotta pick people who you love to hear play. And that, and also trust is key thing. In oftentimes, it's the jazz world is a very male dominated world,
Mhm.
and a lot of instrumentalists, kind of, when they see a singer and a woman come to the stage, they kind of assume that she's not a musician, she's just a singer.
Mhm.
And so they're gonna do things like cue her in, like, really, really obviously,
Obviously. Mhm.
or like kind of like have fun while they're soloing, and then when they're playing under her, like kind of do the same shit,
Mhm.
assuming that she's not gonna hear the stuff or whatever. So
Right.
I like a band that trusts me and that I trust them, that we can go anywhere, that they can throw stuff at me and I'll catch it, and just, you know to feel comfortable of taking different routes, and
Mhm.
that takes trust.
Yes.
So yeah, I guess that's the most important thing when
I see. So I know, like looking at how this sort of played out. Um, like for example, um, Adrien Maillard was in your band, and you knew him for a long time already. So I guess y'all already kind of had that trust.
Yeah.
But for like when you first moved to New York or went to purchase, how did you go about meeting the people who would eventually become your bandmates? Um, like, well, yeah.
Well, college is a easy place to. I mean, in general, the music scene is an easy place to make friends and meet people. But yeah, at Purchase College, all my classmates became my bandmates. Basically,
Okay.
I was the only singer and the only girl and the only foreigner and the only singer in the class. And after 1 year, I brought 5 of my classmates to France, and we were busking from France to Spain to Italy, sleeping on trains, sleeping on beaches, and playing in the street, busking, and for like the whole summer. And then we became a band, and that's what I mean when I say you become a family.
I see.
You can really connect, and so we played together for a long time. Then I played with Adrian for a long time. And with the band with Adrian, we played together for like 5 years. We recorded 3 albums. And we were super tight, and we knew each other by heart, musically and personally. And after a little bit, I kind of felt what I was telling you before, that I was in a really comfortable place. And I felt I needed some challenge. I was loving this band, and it was beautiful and super tight and everything, but I was starting to lack this challenge and this growth, and so that's why I decided to quit the chapter of that band, move from New York to New Orleans, start working on a completely different project, musical theater. And just to take a different route and learn stuff that I didn't know. And when I got to New Orleans, I didn't want to find a band right away. I wanted to try and play with a lot of different musicians and just see how we connect. And there's something beautiful about that too. Getting on the bandstand with people that you don't know, that you've never played with. Like, okay, perform in front of people. You don't know each other, just do it. And I love that too. I love the getting to know each other on the stage. So
your the album you released with Ryan Hansler this past March, was it? So how did that come about? I liked it, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Well, that was actually exactly like that. When I moved to New Orleans, so I didn't know anyone, and so I wanted to get to know people. So I called the Sidebar, my favorite place to play, one of my favorite places to play in New Orleans. I called the Sidebar, and I had met Chez Pierre at Spotted Cat. And so I asked him to play duo. And so we performed duo at Sidebar. And then the Sidebar gave me like a date every month. And so every month I would contact a different musician from New Orleans that I didn't know, that I'd never played with. And be like, hey, you want to play at Sidebar? And so that's how I got to know so many musicians. I did that with Chez Pierre. I did that with Oscar Rossignoli. I did that with, Dave Torkanowski, with Larry Siebers. And one of them was Ryan.
Okay.
And so I met Ryan basically doing a gig with him at Sidebar, and the connection was just instantaneous. And so yeah, then we started playing together a little more, and I just wanted to get in the studio together and see what comes out. And so that record is basically, we just spent an afternoon in the studio. We didn't even, we just called tunes. We didn't even press record and stop between each tune. We just press record once and just roll it and then see what comes. And yeah, that's what came about.
Wow. Okay. So you it seems like I don't want to pry too much into your personal life, but you know, with musicians being like family and everything, sort of surrounding yourself with the right people, so to speak, is really important when it comes to actually not only finding success within a career, but in life in general or in all parts of it. So this is something you seem to have been doing already. You think this is something that sort of naturally happened just as you strive to live in the moment, or is this something that you kind of actively have done?
That's a great question. I think it's probably a bit of both. I think you have to actively try to live in the moment because it's not as easy as it should be easy, but we humans like to make it hard. We like to think suffering thoughts. We just hold on to this stuff, to anxiousness and stress. And so we have to consciously work at being in the moment, get better at it, meditate, make music. We're lucky as musicians to have that, because that is definitely something that brings us in the moment. But even within the music, there are moments where we can fall into autopilot and thinking. So I think it's just like with everything in life. It's a skill that takes practice, and the skill of being in the moment takes practice. And it takes first realizing when you're not in it, and then finding ways to bring you back in it. And what being in the moment really means is listening to what's around you, but listening to what's inside of you, what comes up, without, we kind of live in a world where when there's nothing happening and all of a sudden the things start coming up, we immediately take the phone and, so to let things come up and listen to what's inside of you. And the more you practice that, the more you practice the skill of being able to do that, the more then you make the right choices, the right decisions based on what you learned from listening to yourself. And part of the right choices is surrounding yourself with the right people and kind of getting away from the wrong ones.
Wow. Okay. Wow. This has been very it's really nice to sort of I never usually think about things this way, so sort of bringing new perspectives to me. So when you were in the Dominican Republic, this is sort of a side question, you sought out an experience in New York to find a bit of a challenge, right? So would I'm guessing you'd say you found what you were looking for in making that move. And what were some of the challenges in sort of making it or finding success out there? And what sort of things you think contributed to making it easier?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because when I get asked this question, I'm like, well, I feel like the challenges, the things that made it harder, in retrospect, are the things that helped me grow. So they're kind of the things that made it easier for me to have a better career, because thanks to those difficult moments, I grew. And I think that's the same with everyone that you look up to, all the people that have like a great career, or the people that have made it. It's not because the red carpet was laid out for them, and because everything was easy for them, because they had all the talent, and so every time it was great success. No, it's because every time something difficult happened, every time they got down, they learned from it, and they grew stronger, and they got back up. And so that's why they're still there, because the hard times happens to everybody. It's just about what you take out from it Do you let it beat you down? Or do you, yes, okay, now I grew from that, so now that's easy. Take me to the next hard thing. And so all the things that I look back on that could have been like difficult things, like for example, I touched on being a woman in the jazz world. And that was one of the hard things, you know, getting to a jam session and freaking not letting the looks of disappointment of you coming on the stage bother you. Not letting, oh, we're going to have to do it in a different key, take you down. That made me stronger because that built like a, And also learning that, okay, I'm a singer, so they're not going to take me seriously unless I fucking do my homework and prove that I know my shit. Mm-hmm. So then it made me work harder.
Wow.
So then it made me grow. So thanks to those looks, thanks to that judgment, I grew. So it's like the hard things become the things that actually help you out.
I see. Wow.
One of the things that was crazy in New York was I went to, so here's another example of me trying to find a way to challenge myself. I did the Apollo Theater in Harlem. They have, like, every Wednesday they have amateur night. And basically the logo is be good or be gone.
Wow.
And so people are allowed to boo if they don't like you. And I went to try it out, and I got booed like crazy. 1,500 people booing at me while I'm singing, and you have to keep singing until the judge decides it's an official boo and turns the alarm off, and then this guy comes and beats you with a stick and chases you off the stage.
Wow.
And I did that, and after that I was like, okay, nothing can be worse than that. I'm fearless now. And I learned so much from it. I learned on how to, like, grab an audience right from the start, because I hadn't grabbed them and they just were like, they booed immediately. And so 4 months later, I went back and I won.
Wow.
And so this hard event, this really event that could have destroyed me, could have been like, oh man, I'm not fit for this. I guess I'll find something else to do. It made me stronger. So that's why, you know, the hard times are there for you, just like the wall, you know, we were talking about before. They're a blessing, those hard times.
So you sort of use them. So I guess part of the mindset, or what we can take away from living in the moment, is not necessarily seeing a wall as a wall, but as a guide to progress or growth.
Yeah, it's like it shows you what you have to work on. Yeah.
I see. Wow. Okay. That's really interesting. So, when you sort of take an experience like that and then use it to grow, is that when you sort of figure out or find a comfortable place that you once again need to look for more challenge? Is it sort of like a cycle for you?
Yeah. Or? Yeah. It's, you know, it goes in waves. You know, life is not like all this or all that. It just goes in waves. And you know, when I found, for example, I had been singing standards for a long time, and I know hundreds of standards, and when I discovered Sondheim, I was like, wow, those lyrics are different. I want to, you know, explore this a little more. And so I went into this world that was completely different and just started growing, and just it developed so many things in me. And when I go back to standards now, I see them in a completely different light. And so even just growing on one realm of, you know, one genre, when you come back to your other thing that you felt comfortable in before, it just it opens a whole new perspective on it, and so you just grow on on all the angles. And then, you know, now after having worked on Sondheim and like dissecting everything, now I'm like, okay, what else can I do? So now these days I'm feeling like, okay, I feel like I've dove into the English language for a few years now, and so now I'm so into Spanish songs. I never really sang a lot in my mother tongue, and so these days I'm exploring learning more boleros and just Spanish songs, just because it's a new area that I haven't discovered. And I feel in life and also on the bandstand, you always have to be in beginner's mind. You always have to be learning. It's not like you get in the practice room, you do all your scales, and you get your chops all done, and then when you get on stage, that's it, it's perfect. No, when you get on stage, that's the best practice room, and that's where you want to be trying shit out, because you get direct feedback from the audience. And so whenever you feel like you're not learning, it means you gotta put yourself in a challenging spot. And I actually do this consciously sometimes. Like I have this song that I wrote that is 4 chords, and I've played it live many times because people always request it, and so I take a solo on it, and I've taken a solo on it like 500 times, and sometimes I'm like, what can I say that I haven't said on these 4 chords? You know, I'm not inspired, and I'm like in autopilot, and I'm like, and so I catch myself that I'm in my head, and I'm like, okay, I'm not there. So what can I do to be there? And usually you have to just put yourself in a difficult spot, because you can't be an autopilot if you're in a difficult spot. So I go consciously, I go and look for the weirdest note possible. And I go to a weird note, and as soon as I'm there, I'm back in the moment, because I'm like, okay, I'm in unknown territory. How do I get out of here? What's around here? And even the band is like, whoa, what was that? And they're back in the moment too, because they're like, whoa, where's she going? And so everyone's listening, you know, because it's something different, something new and challenging. And so then that becomes part of my comfort zone. And it's about growing it and getting out of it, so that you grow in territory, and just doing that all the time. And that's the best way to bring you back in the moment.
Wow. Yeah, y'all.
Hey.
That was great. That was great, Cyrille.
Hey, Kerry, you're a great interviewer. Really. Great conversation with you.
Kerry really did his homework, huh?
Yeah. Wow.
Listen, Cyrille, I got a question for you. If that's okay.
Tell me.
So I'm curious, because you left New York, right?
Yeah.
And to leave New York is difficult for most people, because you have to, if you leave New York, you're going to go into a new scene and you got to start all over again. Like, what are some things that you did to set yourself up so that you would have that flexibility in your career?
Well, kind of like we've been talking about, just, you know, once you feel kind of, I was feeling very comfortable in New York. I had been there for 10 years, and I needed a change, but I didn't know what. And then I came to New Orleans with 2 friends of mine just to visit for 3 days, without even thinking, oh, I need a place to move, let me check out New Orleans. Yeah. I just came to New Orleans, and it grabbed me. It grabbed me completely, and I was like, wait, this is where I need to be. Because I love New York. I love New York. But what I felt in New Orleans was kind of what I felt when I first met the Gypsies when I was little.
Yeah.
Like, the way people make music here is because they need it for their health, because it just feels good and it's just fun and it's a community thing. The whole city is about music, not just musicians. It's a family thing. It's about love, and it's not about you know, being number one or building a career or paying the rent. Just about just fun.
Yeah.
And in New York, I was feeling that sometimes people and I would forget why we were doing this, because there's so many other reasons that come and cloud that, you know, like paying the rent and freaking, it's just a very hard city.
Yeah.
And I guess what set me up was, first of all, that I was very excited to come. So, you know, that energy, first of all.
Yeah.
But also, I guess, having done the work in New York, when I came to New Orleans and I met musicians, a lot of them already had heard about me.
Right.
And so that was really helpful. So New York is great for that. And the reason why, like you said, some people have difficulty leaving New York is because a lot of people go to New York with the goal of becoming famous or whatever. And if you leave before that happens, then you failed.
Right.
But what does it really mean to become famous? Just go to New York, get what you need from it, and then once you feel like that's it, you know, go somewhere else and do the same. Exactly. And do the same again in a few years. And
yeah, it's not. I don't think this kind of thing is even like, you know, just New York. It can be anything. It could be Dallas, Texas, and you're just like,
yeah,
all the people here. But if I go somewhere else, like, you know, you got to start over.
Mm-hmm.
We have that in common because I left New Orleans and came to New York.
Yeah,
and you know, I've been here for about 8 years now, and now I'm kind of looking around and like, all right, like,
yeah, well, especially right now.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Right now. I'm like, man, you know, I love New Orleans. Every moment of my life there, I love.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's the greatest place on earth. That's
yeah.
what
Yeah. I've been to a lot of places, and yeah, there's no place like New Orleans. It's definitely its own thing.
You're always welcome to come back whenever, you know?
Yes.
I got to talk my wife into it, but we'll see.
So, Cyrille, so real quick, so, you know, I think you have like such a unique career because, again, like you're an artist and a musician that's really performing on like the highest level possible. But I wanted to like also kind of dig into maybe like hear your perspective on, in addition to that, you're also like extremely well known and like very in demand. You play all over the place. It seems like your name is everywhere all the time. And I was wondering if you could talk about maybe how that the business side of things developed for you in your perspective, or like if you had like a specific big break, or if there was, I don't know, how you feel that you reached that level of like business success in addition to being a great musician.
I think they go hand in hand. I think because of my wanting to grow and, like we were talking about, putting myself in challenging positions, then that's really means putting myself out there, you know, daring, jumping in the pool, and that's where you get your big breaks, you know, like daring to go to amateur night at the Apollo Theater, daring to try for the Montreux competition, for the Monk competition, and all these competitions that I did really just to challenge myself. It's kind of like, for me, it's like kind of giving myself homework. All right, let's see how far I can go. Well, these things become stepping stones where people see you, and people see you challenging yourself and just putting yourself out there, and it's really about being seen in this world. So I guess that's why it goes hand in hand. You just gotta go for it, and the more you go for stuff, the more you are available for people, labels, or you know, managers to see you. And yeah, I guess saying yes to a lot of things. At the beginning, I would just say yes to everything, you know. Hey, can you do a gig? Yes. hey, I have this band that's kind of a funk. Yes. And so I was like in trip hop bands. I was in a ska band. And so that's why I say it goes hand in hand, because I learned a lot from all these things. So I grew as a musician, and at the same time, I was just exposed. And so, yeah, it goes hand in hand.
Can I ask you a follow-up to that? What is the next challenge that you have in your life coming up? Is there anything on your mind?
Yeah, a million things. Oh man, so many that sometimes it's overwhelming. I want to do a whole Spanish album. I want to do a whole original songs album. I have a lot of original songs that I'm trying to work on that, being super self-conscious about my writing. That's one of my biggest challenge. Getting better at the guitar. Yeah, a million of them. But you just gotta go one by one, you know.
Yeah, I think it's so cool to have a conversation with you, and also have seen you come into the scene over the last 2 years and see how you act. And it's funny, like you're always out there, you're always sitting in, you're always playing gigs. It seems like within a couple months of you moving here, you knew everyone in town and everyone knew who you were also. But I think what's really interesting to hear is that you also, there's a side of you too that, like, you know, what we all share is we're all kind of self-conscious about ourselves and have these inner battles that we go through. And I really appreciate that you shared your kind of the process in which you overcome those battles. And I really appreciate you sharing that with us.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the New Orleans scene is so welcoming also. It was really a breeze to just get here and just get to know everyone. It was so easy. Everyone had their arms open, wide open, and yeah, and it felt good. That's also one of the reasons I moved, is because in New York, I was touring a lot, and when I was in New York, I wasn't even playing in the town where I was living, which is kind of why I came to New York in the first place, to be in the scene. But I was starting to play bigger venues like Birdland and Poisson Rouge, and they have kind of like an exclusivity contract where you can't really play 3 months before. And so I was like, where's the point in that, you know? And so I came here and I was like, yeah, I can play Monday at Sidebar, Tuesday at Maison, whatever, and no one cares because everyone just plays all the time, and you can just play in your town, 10-minute bike ride and go do a gig, and that's what I needed too.
Well, listen, thanks for doing this.
Thank you, guys.
Kerry, appreciate you, man.
Kerry, thank you. I had a lot of fun with you.
Same, thank you.
You live in New Orleans, Kerry?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, I hope to meet you in person.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Kerry's a wonderful bassist. He's studying at the Xavier University. His dad is also an amazing bass player here too.
What's his name?
Oh, I'm a junior, so
Kerry Lewis.
Oh, okay.
I always accidentally text your dad instead of you. But y'all, thank you so much for joining us. Everyone who's watching online, thank you guys so much for checking out Second Line Arts Collective. We do ask if you guys have some extra money. We do have a donate button on our Facebook page, and again, we are bringing this programming to you all for free. We hope, again, our goal is to share information with the community and with our students. And we can't do this without donations. And we'd like to thank all the donors who have helped us out, and especially the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Foundation for providing a community partnership grant for us last year. And other than that, we'll be back tomorrow with bassist Jonathan Michel. And you guys have a wonderful day, and we'll catch you guys tomorrow.